Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. Today we have a real gem for you folks. I feel so privileged to have had Louisa Jewell on our episode today. Louisa is one of Canada's leading experts on the science of well-being and human thriving, and she founded the Canadian Positive Psychology Association. And she was my teacher in all things positive psychology at the Flourishing Center. And this interview is an amazing place to, one, figure out what on earth positive psychology even means, to hear Louisa's story as a real honest and open person who has had some real hardships in life and has used the learnings of positive psychology to help her not only get through them, but to thrive within some of the hardest things that you could imagine happening to a person. And Louisa, of course, is an amazing teacher. So she also teaches us some things about growth mindset and about how can we take care of ourselves, how can we put ourselves first and why that's important, and so much more. So stick around if you are someone who maybe is struggling and needs to find the courage to say, please help me figure this out. Or if you have been there and are now in a place where you need inspiration and you want to hear how someone like Louisa has set up such an incredible thing like the Canadian Positive Psychology Association, as well as her amazing podcast on Audible called The Awesome Project. So do check that out as well. All right, so stay tuned and let's dig in. Hi, Louisa. Thanks so much for joining today.
Hi, Mel. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I am so excited to have you here. Louisa's my teacher, essentially, of all things positive psychology, and you've been an amazing part of my journey in rediscovering myself as a person and using some of these tools that positive psychology, which we'll talk about what that is in a second, but using those tools to really come back to myself, actually. So CAP, which is a certificate in applied positive psychology, which Louisa taught me in, definitely made a big difference in my life. So I'm so excited to have you here to share with others.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I think that positive psychology really does change your life. Like I remember when I did my Master of Applied Positive Psychology degree, not only did I learn all the tools, but when I applied it to myself, it completely transformed who I was. It's kind of like the school of life kind of thing. Chris Peterson, one of the founders of positive psychology, used to always say that it's, really the study of the good life.
Yeah, I really like that. And that's a great introduction, because my first question I wanted to ask was, what is positive psychology in your terms? Because that phrase will likely come up a lot in our conversation today. So how would you describe what positive psychology is?
Well, I would say that it is the scientific study of psychological well-being and human flourishing. And to me, positive psychology is really the study of what's right in us, but it's also the study of what keeps us psychologically healthy. And so much of what we learn is really about mental illness. And I think it's such an epidemic right now. Mental health is such an epidemic right now that I think we really there's a real urgency to know about prevention and how to be proactive with your mental health. And so that's why I'm really passionate about helping people learn these tools, because life can be hard and we need tools, these kind of tools, to navigate life.
Yeah, for sure. That's an amazing description. And life life is hard. It always is hard, right? And you might have some moments where it doesn't feel as much, but we will all have those times when things feel really hard on
Yeah.
whatever scale, part of the scale that is within
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Like, life is hard and we need to make the best of it. We need to be able to really squeeze every ounce of joy and happiness. And, I'm reading a book and one of the things they talk about is that what are you putting your attention on? And really your momentary, what you decide to put your attention on every single day, kind of if you sum all that up at the end of your life, that's kind of your life, right? What you decided to focus in on. And so much of our brain can take us away to those dark places, even when things are not going bad. We ruminate about those things that happened last week or last month, and they kind of rob us of even the good times or the moments when things are good. So, I think having the skills to know how to think, feel, and behave in a way that promotes your well being, that promotes your happiness, I think is really a game changer.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. And it's the putting into practice. And what I love about the tools that we will give some a little later, but the tools that you've taught me through positive psychology is that they're very practical. They're things I can literally just intentionally add into my day or catch myself in one of my thoughts that aren't serving me particularly well and be like, okay, what do I need to do to reframe that? If something frustrates me, I'm a mom, as everyone knows, and we get frustrated because things happen. Things happen with our kids or our partner or just in life in general, and it's what we don't want to do is react super negatively and strongly in the moment. We do sometimes because we're human, but that's not what we're aiming to do. So in those moments, I now can take myself away and just be like, and know what to do with that space. Yes, there's
Yeah.
the breathing and the getting back to yourself, but then okay, challenge some of the thoughts that I'm having that are making me feel so frustrated in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think, we feel frustrated as parents and then we don't show up the way that we always want to show up. And then, of course, then we beat ourselves up for
Yeah.
not showing up the way
Yeah.
that we wanted to show up, right? So
Exactly.
it's just constant. As a parent, it's just really constant. I think you really have to have a lot of self-compassion as a parent and always do better. And I remember even my daughter saying, Mom, I feel like you're a better mom after positive psychology. And
Wow.
that was really great because I really did want to change my mental health. And this will really make mothers feel guilty. One of the number one contributors to children's depression is the depression rates of the mother. So
Mm.
we have a huge influence on our kids. So the healthier that we can be, the healthier, the happier. This is why when I always hear mothers say, "Well, I have to put myself last because my kids are more important, so I'm always last." And it's like, I don't want to hear that because if you're putting yourself last, you're not going to be doing the things necessary to be the best mom that you can be. You have to put yourself first, not all the time, but there has to be times where you're putting yourself first and saying, I need this for my mental health, for me to be able to show up as my best self. And then guess what? The kids eventually are going to move on. If you've done your job, they're going to go off to school or work or live in another country or find partners and leave. And then you're going to kind of be left with yourself, right? So if you haven't been thinking about what is good with you, what you want out of your life, what you want to achieve, how you want to be, how you want to give to the world. You're going to kind of be stuck in that place when your kids are gone and going, what now?
Yeah, exactly. And that I can agree with every single part of that. And to add to it, when we do say, I want to take time for myself, sometimes what I do anyways is trick myself by saying, I want to take time. I want to put myself first so that I'm putting my kids first because it's the same thing. right?
Yeah.
It really is. It might not feel like it in that exact moment with the screaming child behind the door because you had to walk away, or with, whatever it might be, but it's the same thing. By putting myself first, I am putting my kids first.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. I
Yeah.
agree.
Because
Yeah.
it's that prevention. Okay, so we dove right into positive psychology, but tell us a little bit about you. Who is Louisa Jewell?
Oh,
It's a very
who
broad,
is
big
who is
question
Louisa
for
Jewell?
you.
Well, I'll tell you that my story around positive psychology and how I got into it is that I was struggling, as a mother, and I was a new mother, and then I suffered through several miscarriages, so I found that I was really in a dark place. I was going through some other big things, big challenges in my life, so it was all kind of culminating together, and then I asked, I remember I was at work and the psychologist just happened to be there for an event. And I said to her, how do you know when you need help? How do you know when it's time to go see a therapist? And she said, Louisa, it's when you're not coping well. If you find it difficult to get out of bed, or you can't get out of bed, or you don't feel like going to work, or you can't be there with your kids, so then I thought, okay, I think that's me. I think I need some help coping. And I wish more people would be open to going to see a therapist, because seeing a therapist really kind of changed my life. And I realized that the therapist was doing things, reframing my thoughts. They had techniques, and it was very, very helpful. And I'd leave and then come back when things fell apart again. And finally, I said to my therapist, like, I need to know what you know. I can't just keep coming back here. Like, I know you're reframing my thoughts. I need to know those techniques. And so I said, give me some books. So he gave me some books. And that's when I discovered Marty Seligman's books, Authentic Happiness and Learned Optimism. And I was just blown away that there's actually a science behind this, that psychologists are they're using cognitive behavioral therapy, but that's something that actually I can learn and apply to myself. So if cognitive behavioral therapy helps me get out of a depression, then wouldn't cognitive behavioral therapy keep me, in a healthy space, to have healthy ways of living and thinking, right? Cognitive is much more around how we think about things. So, that was just life transforming. And then I did my master's degree in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and applied everything to myself, and I just completely transformed. And I think that, life has taken me up and down. And again, I thought, oh, I've been through hard times, and then another thing hits, and I'm like, wow, like I really need this stuff to keep me afloat, because I would say the past, 7 years have been just so, so difficult. And then the pandemic hit, and it was just, I really think that I always say thank goodness for positive psychology in my life, because I really would probably be, clinically depressed, right now, if I didn't have those. And I think, I just came back from a 6-month trip traveling around the world. And so I love traveling. And I really have never led kind of a conventional life, because I always believe that life is abundant and that I'll be able to create whatever life that I want. And it's not always easy. Right? Building your own business, it's not an easy thing, but it is the best thing, I think, if you can do it, especially as a mother, because then you can make your own hours and focus on the things that you really love to do. And I think, that's what I try to do with my life. I just don't conform to every, sort of the normal. I kind of just do what I want. It's so funny because some stranger on Instagram, I guess, left me an audio message that says, so I guess you just go around doing whatever you want. I wrote back and I said, I guess that's what I do. So if you want to know who is Louisa Jewell, I think that's a lot of, who I am. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean I don't work really hard to make the money that I make to pay for everything in my life, because you got to eat and pay for your roof over your head and stuff like that. But so I work hard and I play hard, but I
Yeah.
do it the way I want to do it.
That's amazing. And I think what really stands out to me there is that you're not so often with positive psychology, that term, if I say it to someone who has never heard it before, the positive part comes out, right? They're like, oh, so you just walk around happy all the time. Well, you must just have a great life. And actually, what you're saying is, no, I have a really hard life, right? I have a great life and I have a really hard life. And that it's not that I just got, given the right cards. I worked really, really hard, or you worked really, really hard to get yourself to this space where you can manage those challenges that are coming your way at various points.
Yeah, and I think, some people look at a certain life and say, "Oh, I want that, but I can't do that."
Mm.
And I think the difference when you learn the tools is you look at a life and say, I want that. What do I need to do to go have that and get that? And you're right, Mel, those steps sometimes can be very difficult. Sometimes you've got stress and anxiety and think, what the heck am I doing? I have no idea if I can make this happen. Or look at that person over there. They're already doing this. What am I going to contribute? Or, you have those things that come up, but then you have the tools to say, no, here's what you can do. Here's a small step you can take. And step by step, then the next thing you know, a year later, you're living that life that you saw. So I think that's the difference, right? Remember Caroline, I don't know if you know Caroline Miller. She's written a bunch of books, Getting Grit and other books, and she always wears a different color nail polish on her hand to have color because she loves colorful. Everything is colorful. And she was going through the grocery store, and the cashier said, "Oh, I love your nails. That's so great." And she said, "Oh, well, you could have those nails too." And she said, "Oh, no, no, I couldn't." It's like,
So interesting.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Your beliefs about what you can do and what you can achieve, that's everything. That's absolutely everything. Because if you don't think that it could ever happen for you, you're not going to behave in ways to make it happen. Why would you? Right? Like I don't jump off my balcony because I know I can't fly. Right. So that, that solid belief keeps me, in my condo. Do you know what I mean?
Or using the
Um,
stairs.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Do you know what I mean? Like when I have a strong belief, and the same is for that. If I have a strong belief, like, oh, that could never be me, but I always try to find like the baby steps, the little steps. What's one little step I can take towards that? I can do that, you
Mhm.
know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just, I can't get myself away from the metaphor of the balcony now because I'm like, well, if
Oh,
you decided you really wanted to jump off that balcony, your tiny step might be to like learn to hang glide or like, there's always something we can do.
yeah, exactly. Although it's not a desire, so we'll just
No,
leave it at
exactly.
that.
We'll just let it be.
Yeah.
I'm okay
We'll
with
let that,
not jumping off my balcony. I do
yeah.
not recommend anybody jumps off their balcony, by the way.
But there are
But
some people who do jump off buildings with those
yeah,
parachute things. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
and they want to do that, and good for them. That's not for me. But there are people who say, yeah, you know what, it'd be really cool to jump off a building. And I think to myself, wow, I could never do that. And I don't. And so I don't move towards that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
there's a difference between kind of you don't have a desire to do that, right?
Right.
But if you did, then it would be important to inch towards the desire to do that, right? To this
Yeah.
tiny, I call them laughable steps that we can take because they're so tiny that it's like that's not a step, right?
Yeah.
Towards whatever it is that we want to do.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
sometimes people, will say, "Oh, I have no desire to do that." But really they
Mhm.
do. They
Mhm.
really do have a desire to do it, but they're so, I was thinking to myself that I think one of the biggest contributors to mental illness is your inability to admit that you need help.
Mm.
Like in that moment when I asked the therapist, how do you know when you need help? And she said, when you're not coping well. I needed to have the courage to look at myself and say, Louisa, there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. You're actually going through a really hard time. It's okay that you need professional help. And that's the way I spoke to myself. But I had to have the courage to be vulnerable because some people are so guarded that they can't even admit that, they think there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing wrong with you if you're going through a hard time. Like we said, life is hard. It's normal as a human being to find it difficult to get through life because life, can be difficult. But it's having the courage to be able to say, yeah, you know what? Maybe I do need some help with this, and to have the self-compassion to say that's okay. So I think it does take courage. Courage can be really one of the number one things to live a really happy life because without courage, we just wouldn't go after our dreams, our audacious goals, right? We just wouldn't go after them because we'd just be too afraid all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And that courage does involve being afraid, right? It's
Yeah,
being afraid and still deciding to do it whilst afraid, right?
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And doing it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can, is there an example of when you're in your life when you've been able to really pick up that courage and say, this is what I really want to do, so I'm going to start to move towards it?
Well, I think I founded the Canadian Positive Psychology Association. And, I remember thinking this is, so many people were asking me. It was such a new field at the time. No one had really heard of it in Toronto, in my circles, and no one was really doing it. And then so people would come to my office and I'd have like 3 people in my boardroom and then, 15 people in my boardroom and then 40 people in my boardroom. And I still have this mental picture of some people were sitting under the table and, like there's so many people. And then a friend said, look, I've got a big office. Why don't you bring people there? And so finally I just said, I think I need to formalize this. But I was afraid. I was afraid to put myself out there. Like, who am I to be, to head the Canadian Positive Psychology Association? And I think one of the things that helped me be courageous is I met some like-minded people. I sat down with people and said, "What do you think? What do you think about this? What if we started the Canadian Positive Psychology Association?" And they were like, "I am in. I'm in." And I think that helps, to be courageous. So there's two ways it could go. If you want to be more courageous, I think if you're talking to the wrong person, right? You could tell your dream to somebody and they're like, "What? Who the heck are you to do that?" Or "What's that?" Or you don't have the skills to do that, right? So that's usually like a family member, right? Right? Which you think your family members are going to be so supportive. And they're the worst only because they're worried about you. They don't want you to make a fool of yourself, or they don't want you to lose money, or they don't want you, right? Like, they're worried about you. So they're not saying it necessarily to be mean, but they're worried, right? So you could, I always say, don't tell your dreams to those people. Tell your dreams to people who really get it and who really will support you and who really believe that you can do something, those. And so I think for me, that was the turning point is just, having people who are like, yeah, oh yeah, we can definitely do this. And that was really hard. And there were moments where I thought, oh my gosh, I've just destroyed my life. And then it was going to that support group saying, "Are you kidding? You haven't destroyed your life at all. You're fine. Everything's going to be fine." You know, and it's always been, I think for me, the support group that has gotten me through everything, because your mind, when things go really bad, as much training as you have, sometimes your mind can just be in the catastrophe of it all. And so having those good and knowing those reliably safe people, right? The reliably safe people who will be there, and not just to be nice. I don't always want people, oh, Louisa, you look so nice, and and everything's good, and always perfect. No, I want people who kind of are also there to challenge me and to be realistic as well. Those I find are the most supportive people. But I think that's a game changer for me, to have that support group. And I have a really good support group. And I create them. I have mastermind groups. I have accountability partners. I create those systems because they are so important.
And that's a really good point. Well, there's a couple really good points in there. So one is just that importance of community and other people surrounding us, and the right kind of people who are helping us to be a better person, right?
Yeah.
And that's through support when that is what's needed, and that's through challenge when that is what's needed, right? So
Exactly.
when we go out and we want to share this big audacious dream, it's like you say, let's find the person who's at that point. I don't want realistic. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who will go big and crazy with me.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
and and then once I've kind of got the support around me and belief a little bit more that something along the lines of this big huge thing is possible, then I want to chat with, say, my husband, who's the realistic type, and say, okay, like, how do I make this happen? Like, show me how. I don't need you to tell me whether it's possible or not. What I need you to do is show me, like, let's work together and figure out what we could do here, right? And those are just different phases of the journey, and
Yeah.
different types of people that we need for different types of things. And I think it's
Yeah.
amazing that you have found those groups, and that you have actually, more importantly, which is the second point, you've created those
I
groups,
created the groups. Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
Because loneliness is like the epidemic at the moment. Loneliness is so huge in our world. And I think for moms especially, it can be really easy to fall into the trap of thinking, I'm the only one that thinks this way. I'm the only one that feels this way right now.
Yeah.
And therefore not reach out for other people, even just to make friends. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
everybody else has as many friends as they need, so I don't want to bother them. Right?
Yeah.
Like
What
that,
is that
right?
word? Like, oh, I'm going to bother them. I
Yeah.
hear that. I hear that. But I think, in our lives, my friend always says, one of my girlfriends says, men are always going to come and go, but our girlfriends are what's, going to be there. And, and I think that as mothers, we need to have those nights every week where we're going out with our girlfriends, because we need to maintain those girlfriend bonds. We need somebody to be able to have those talks with. And when our partners or things fall apart, our girlfriends are there for us. And divorce rates are high. Or I went through a separation, and then my ex-husband got sick and died. And who was there through all of that? My girlfriends, and my daughters, and I loved this man very much. We stayed very close friends. And I actually moved him back in, and my kids and we took care of him until he died. So that was hard. And again, who got me through that? My girlfriends. And if I had just dropped my girlfriends when I got married, I would not have had them in my life. But because I was a devoted girlfriend, who was there for them through through good times and bad times. I'm not just there through bad times. We really believe that we need to have fun. Like, I have several trips booked with my girlfriends, already, and until February of next year, like, we are always having fun. I was just up at my friend's cottage, this weekend. And, I think it's just really important that we maintain those fun friendships. I've got my masterminds for work, and I've got my girlfriends, my fun times. Where did fun go? Like, some people, like, I remember when I was in my 40s, and my husband and I, we'd go dancing. And people would say, oh, what? You go dancing? I don't go I have kids. I'm like, yeah, I've got kids. They're with the babysitter, or they're at grandma's house for the weekend, Why can't we still have fun in our 40s or when we have kids? What do you think that is, Mel? Why do you think people have a hard time playing and having fun?
I think it's firstly, play is one of my strongest values, and I am a massive fan of it, and I struggle with it because I think as we grow up, we are taught that play is no longer acceptable unless it's with a child. And even then it's hard to do still, to be honest. And there's something about how our play changes a little bit as we get older as well, and maybe we're not taught how to play anymore in a way, or given like the space to explore what that means for ourselves. Because play for me now is, I like to play with possibility. I want to get some people out, and I want to think big, and I want to dream big and think like, okay, we want to go to the moon, let's figure out how. I just, even if it doesn't happen, I don't care about the happening part. What I
Yeah.
love is the play of exploring what could be possible. And that's one of my favorite things to do, or to go to the beach with my kids and play in the sand. But I have to force myself a bit more, right? Because
Yeah.
I also want to sit and relax in the sand. And something about play shifts in us, I think, as we get older. And kids are a glorious reminder of the power of play. My daughter sometimes, just the other day, like straight to the heart, was like, Mama, come play with me. You never play with me anymore. I'm like,
Aw.
oh
Oh.
God. But it makes me reassess, right? I'm like, I
Yeah.
think I'm playing with her, but in her eyes, and who knows, maybe that's just in the last 2 days, maybe that's longer. We don't know what she's like thinking in her mind about that. But in her mind, she's like, Mom, I'm giving you an invitation to come and play more. Like,
Yeah.
please come, like, stop being so serious and planning whatever has to happen next. Just come play, come do some crafts with me, or come just be, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
what a beautiful invitation that is. And sometimes, as much as that hurts to hear, that's exactly what we need to hear, is this invitation from kids or our friends or whoever it is to come and play.
And I think even going back to, permission to be human, permission to
Yeah.
play, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And again, I think it comes back to courage
Yeah.
because you're right. Society says, oh, that's silly. Oh, you're going to Burning Man. Like I remember when I said I was going to Burning Man, first of all, people were excited because they would never go.
Yeah.
They're like, you're going to Burning Man? I wish I could go again. You could if you wanted to, right? And what I love about Burning Man is you spend the whole week playing. It is full on adult play for 7 days. You're climbing on structures, you're painting your body, you're dancing, any time of day there and night, there's something fun and interesting. And, somebody spent hundreds of thousands of dollars creating these things so that people could just play for 7 days and you're wearing costumes and you're right. Some people would look at that and say, oh, that's ridiculous. You're older now. That's so silly, right? And you have to have the courage to say, I really don't care.
Yeah,
I
it
really
is,
don't
and
care.
I love it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what
And
I need. That's my body needs, that what my mind needs, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
also like on my deathbed, I'm gonna say, damn it, I went to Burning Man, when I'm 96 in diapers sitting around watching soap operas, I'm gonna be like, I don't care because I went to Burning Man. Like
Yeah.
you live only one time, right? You live only once. And that's how I look at it, is that we only live once. So go and dance and go to Burning Man and go and play with your kids and get out with your girlfriends and work out. Even some people feel that they can't, oh my gosh, how can I go and do my workout in the morning? Well, you need to do that to stay healthy, right? That's not even play. That's hygiene as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to, give ourselves permission to live our best lives. And then our kids see that, right? And then our kids feel the permission to be able to live their best lives as well.
Yeah. I love that. There's two real themes that came out there. One is the play element, and the other was community and connection with other people. And I wonder, what would you say to people, to moms especially, who maybe feel like they don't have that group of girlfriends they can go out and play with yet? What could they do to make a step towards that?
I say be the change you want to be. Call a friend. I met so many mothers in the play groups or at the park, or at my kids' school. Like I still have a friend, our kids went to school together and we still hang out. And it's, 25 years later, 20 years in the making, right? And our kids are not friends anymore, right? Not that anything happened. They still, like they still like each other and everything. They just went their separate ways in terms of, their lives, but we are still good friends and we still love each other. So, and that just comes from, hey, do you want to go out for dinner? We'll go sit and chat and have dinner and have a glass of wine. Or do you want to go see a movie? Or do you want to go for a walk? A run, I remember years ago with this particular friend, she was swimming and I said, where do you swim? And she said, oh, University of Toronto. And I said, I would love to come with you if you want someone to go with you. She said, I would love that. So we would go, like, I think the kids were at school and on, I think Wednesday afternoons or something, we would swim. I would do the backstroke while she was doing the front stroke and we'd chat the whole Wham. So we got exercise, we chatted, we talked, and that's how, we developed our friendships. But, I think this idea that we're going to bother somebody, guess what? They're probably sitting at home saying, geez, I wish somebody would ask me out for a glass of wine, or we don't have to drink when we do it. But, I'm sure there's lots of people who are thinking, I really wish I had more friends. And probably your invitation will be so welcomed. And then what's the worst that could happen? They say, oh, I'm too busy. Well, okay, move on to the next person,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I know that, this has definitely been a challenge in my times because I moved to Vancouver Island from England during a pandemic. So like finding people to connect with was, especially for those first couple of years, really challenging. And I think always has been because I don't like small talk. I want to get into the goods. So the
Yeah.
stories I would tell myself would be like, people be intimidated of the fact that I want to talk about their deepest, darkest dreams, right?
You've got to ease them in. You got to
You got
ease
to
them
ease them
in.
in a
Yeah.
bit. And I was eventually, I kind of had to rewire and reframe, I should say, that story in my head of like, I'm not going to go in and go way deep, but I might just be like, well, I might be curious more than anything. Actually, my coaching stuff has helped so much because in a conversation with anyone, I keep telling myself I think we all do, I have to sound smart, or I'm focusing so much on what I have to say that I'm
Yeah.
not really listening to what the other person's saying that much. And in the
Mhm.
end, if you just repeat back and be really curious about what they're saying,
Yeah.
then the conversation goes much smoother and it's more interesting. And then you get to the fact that they like to swim at the pool and that, like I've always wanted to swim, or I really like swimming, and you move on to that more naturally, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely what I continue to learn each time, and is so, so important.
Well, and I think too, if we just have this calm confidence that,
Yeah.
I'm smart enough, I don't have to think about what I'm saying because I'm sure whatever comes out of my mouth is going to be intelligent enough. And
Yeah.
even if I don't have my most intelligent moment, it doesn't mean I'm not smart or I'm not intelligent or I'm not
Mhm.
savvy or cool,
Yeah.
I
And the other
think,
person's
yeah,
probably just thinking to themselves about what they're gonna say next, right?
yeah, yeah,
If we
that's
just
right.
talk smart, like, that's
Right.
just kind of the way it works, right? So in
Yeah.
some
And
ways,
I,
it doesn't matter
yeah.
what we say.
I think, and I think this, you know about the work of Dr. Carol Dweck and the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And really, I think the growth mindset is about caring less about what other people think, And oh my gosh, I remember when I read that book, I thought, I have a fixed mindset, 100%, you know, 100% I have a fixed mindset. And I thought to myself, I definitely have to change this because I really, really, really care too much about what other people think. And when I stopped caring about what other people think, oh my gosh, I mean, life was glorious. And I don't mean that I don't care about what my clients think, because obviously I want to do a good job, and I care about what my friends and family think because I don't want to hurt their feelings, and I want to be a good friend and a good parent and a good community member. And, I just care less about if I want to go dancing. I don't care if people don't like that because I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not doing anything wrong. If I want to go to Burning Man, I don't care, what other people think. And actually people think it's cool as hell. You know what I mean? So we sometimes think, oh my gosh, people are really going to think badly of us. And then the next thing you know, they actually think you're really cool for doing those things. So I think that's a real tool that we have to care less about. And if something comes out of my mouth that's stupid, I don't think I'm a stupid person. I just say, oh, yeah, well, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing I said. But you know what? I'm still a pretty smart person. I don't know everything. It's okay.
Yeah. So really disconnecting the action from who you are as a person, right? And so if you
Yeah.
could you give us a little description, a little micro tutorial about growth mindset?
Oh, well, again, in a nutshell, it's about not focusing on looking good and instead focusing on getting good. That's kind of my nutshell for growth
Mm,
mindset. And it's really about, so when we believe that intelligence and talent is fixed, you're either born that way or you're not, then you're always protecting, how you're showing up. Because if I show up as stupid one day, then you have in your brain, that means I'm stupid, like all of me. Like I'm just a stupid human being. If I fail that test, that means I'm stupid, right? Whereas we know that if you fail that test, maybe you just didn't study enough. Maybe that's not your forte. Maybe that's not your strength. Maybe if you did another test, you'd get an A plus, right? So you're not just born that way, because if you work really hard and study and practice through experience, you can get there. And that's the growth mindset, to believe, yeah, I'm born with a certain intelligence. I'm born with a certain level of talent. And if I really want to be good at something, if I work hard and put the effort in, then I will succeed and do better and become smarter at it, become more intelligent at it, become more talented in that area. And as I do it, I know I'm not going to be good at it right off the bat because I've never done it before. I'm not good at it, not yet. And that's Carol Dweck's favorite word, is yet, right? But if I'm always embarrassed to go and try something and fail in front of other people because I care more about how I'm going to look, I'm never going to try those things. I'm never going to give myself the opportunity to get good at things that I really want to get good at. So, I think we have to give ourselves the permission to go out, try things, not look so good, fail at them, and say, who cares? I'm actually getting better. And one day I'm going to be really good because I'm putting in the effort. And I think that's what is at the heart of growth mindset, is to care more about just learning and growing, and care less about what other people think as you're doing that. A kid doesn't think, oh my gosh, look at how stupid I look learning how to walk. They just go and learn how to walk, right? And they're really not self-conscious and thinking, geez, people must think I'm really awful at walking, right? They
yeah.
just go and try it. We don't do that as adults. Are you kidding? We'd be too embarrassed, to go out and do something like that. And we have to just get over that. When people talk about fear of failure, it's really not fear of failure. It's really fear of being socially evaluated. That's the fear. Because if I said, Mel, I'm going to put you on, the planet over there, and you're going to try all these things with podcasts and this and business ventures, and you're going to have this fake audience that's going to help you perfect it all. And then when you come back, it'll all be perfect. You go, yeah, okay, sign me up, because then I'm not failing in front of anybody, right? wouldn't we all love to do that, right? Because it'd just be so much easier. So really, it's not fear of failure. It's really fear of evaluation. And if you can get over that fear, and,
Yeah.
and again, to remind yourself that often people are not saying, oh, look, she failed at something. Instead, they're saying, oh, look at her. Look at her. She's like really going after it, like with your podcast, right? You're inspiring so many women and so many moms and saying, look at Mel has a podcast. This is fantastic and good for her, right? It's inspiring when you go out and do stuff.
Definitely. And that action does create that. And my response to anybody who says something similar to that to me is like, and you can too. Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's amazing that I'm doing this, and you can too. And it did take me 4 years to do it. Like, it's not like I just jumped in with fully confident ability to just start talking to the air, especially when it's just me talking, right?
Yeah,
It just took practice. I did ones that I didn't put out there, like there's lots of different things that came along the way. And the point is that they can too. Anyone
yeah,
can, if that's what they really want to do. And
exactly.
thank you for that description of growth mindset. And what comes to my mind is how it relates, how developing our own growth mindset really can positively impact our children as well. If there was one thing we've really worked on it, I think it would be growth mindset that would really make a difference. I look at my son who somewhere along the way, he's 5 now, has developed, he does go into not having a growth mindset, and he'll get really frustrated and it's like, I never, and he catastrophize and everything along the way. I'll never be able to do it. I'll never this, I'll never that. And I love that you pointed out the word yet, because that's what we use a lot. It's like, I can't tie my shoes yet.
Yeah,
I can't get
exactly.
my sock on yet. And he just looks at me, he's like, stop saying that, but it but it gets in his mind. And I think what comes to my mind is this importance of us doing things in front of our kids and in front of the world that do scare us and that we're not good at yet. And showing
Exactly.
others that that's what we do helps them to try things too. So an
Yes.
example that comes to mind is my daughter seems to have a natural desire for music, both kids actually, but daughter especially. And my husband's really good at the piano. At least I think he's good. He doesn't think he's good. But he went to like grade 8 or 9 or something when he was a kid, and then actually stopped when like a 12, he was 17 and a 12-year-old was better than him. So I was like, oh no, you should keep going. But anyways, the point of the story is that he goes and plays this super fancy song on the piano, and my kids are kind of intrigued, but they don't really do anything else. So recently I was like, I'm going to download an app that will teach me how to play piano. And it is like starting from the super basics. And I sit there with my iPad in front of me and it takes me through the different lessons and I make mistakes and my kids are standing there watching me and they want to come and sit and play, right? They
Nice.
want
I
to come
love
and sit and
that.
play because it's accessible and because they
Yeah.
see that I struggle with bits and I have to do it over and over and over again,
Yeah.
right?
And they see that you're starting. That,
Exactly.
oh, this is where we start. And
Yeah.
I think when you show them that baby step, they go, "Oh, I can do that. Like I can't do what dad does,
Yeah.
but I can do that." So it changes their belief that they could actually do it too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, like, what do we learn from that? What else in life can we show our kids,
Yeah.
even with our dream, like that actually we aren't going to be good right away at it and that we're going to try it anyways. And we're going to let them see the fact that we're not good
Exactly.
at it.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do, as you say, because as humans, our biggest fear in general is to look bad and be isolated from other people because we need that connection with other people so strongly. So it
Yeah.
takes some work to acknowledge that fear and say, actually, I wouldn't be isolated for this, or it's unlikely, or this is what I'd do if I was. I'd find the other people that wouldn't. And,
Yeah.
to work through that fear so that we can actually just show up and try new things.
Well, exactly. And I think, again, this goes back to the support group. So, role models, seeing people who are doing it, that helps us to believe, yeah, I can do that too. But also to say, I went out and I tried this thing and man, did it ever fail, you
Yeah.
know? And so, with my accountability partner, we go through, well, what happened? What did we do? What did we do that didn't work well? And what did we do that actually did work well? And
Yeah.
what would we change for next time? And just get back up and try again, because often we feel compelled to kind of give up after the first try because we're so embarrassed. And instead,
Yeah.
you have to just be able to say, no, I learned a lot and we're just going to
Yeah.
move on.
Even better, just laugh at it. Sometimes things happen like
Yeah.
shite's hitting
Yeah.
the fan in the house somehow. And I'm like, and I just look at the situation and I just start laughing because this is the most ridiculous thing in the
Yeah.
world. Right?
Yes. But I think
And
it's
like,
good. I think it's good if we can also learn and say, well, what
yeah,
did we do? Because sometimes again, we want to just throw the baby away with the bathwater and say, screw it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And just be able to say, well, I'm just going to keep focused on the goal. And I really, and what did I learn and what am I going to do differently? Like I'm doing stand-up comedy. So I'm doing another set now. So I'm starting tonight. Actually, tonight is my first class and I create sets with groups of people because I just find it a lot easier. And the only way you think you're funny as hell when you write something, but the only way you actually know if you're funny is if you get up and say it. And I've already created a bit of a bit for this group. And then as I say it, as I get up, even just say it to myself, I think, oh, that's not funny, And then I'll get up in front of them. And if they don't laugh, I'll say, well, you're not funny like that. I actually don't say you're not funny. I say the material's not funny. You have to change the material because if you say you're not funny, you'll never get back up, right? But I always say the material's not working, change the material and then get back up, right? And then the next time, oh, more people are laughing. You go, okay, it's working. So I
yeah,
think the more we can sort of just focus on the task and not worry so much about us,
yeah.
it helps us to do things like stand-up comedy, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly. Isn't there a word that combines exciting and terrifying?
Oh, I
It's
that
like
would be a good word.
exciting or something like that.
Yeah, that would be a good word. That is doing stand-up comedy. Excite. Yeah, there's got to be a word. I'll have to think about it. Maybe I'll come up with it in my routine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Brilliant. I love that you're out there doing that and really taking something I'm assuming that scared you quite a bit when you first came into it and probably still does.
Oh yeah.
Like standing up there. That's full on fighting that fear or embracing maybe even that fear of being isolated because someone's not going to laugh. Like that's like the biggest
Yeah.
fear, right?
Yeah.
Someone's
Yeah.
either going to laugh for the wrong reason or not going to laugh, and it's
Yeah.
amazing that you can get up on stage and just take that on,
Well,
right?
I
And
think,
feel
yeah.
that courage that we were talking about.
And I think if you're just focused on, look, I'm just getting up in front of people just to see what material works and what material doesn't. It's not me. And it's really hard to do, because you take it personally because it is you getting up there and you know what I mean? But the more you can, and I remember, I don't know if you remember, but Jerry Seinfeld, the most successful comedian probably of all time, right? He scrapped all of his old material
Hmm.
and he was trying new material and he had to go into the clubs as Jerry Seinfeld and try this new material. Talk about growth mindset. He could really think, well, how can Jerry Seinfeld go and do an embarrassing set? But, he had to do that to try the material. That's the only way he would know, right? So talk about terrifying. But he said in his documentary, he said, I didn't care if they liked me. I wanted them to like the material. Like that's
Mhm.
such a growth mindset thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So what's your favorite topic of positive psychology?
Well, I think it's the topic of my book, Wire Your Brain for Confidence. And it's really the topic of self-efficacy, which is why I wrote about that. And, so, I always struggled with anxiety. I was terrified of, I always wanted to look good. I was really terrified of looking bad in front of other people. And then when I discovered that there is a science on how you can actually grow in confidence and how you can actually do it, how you put it into practice, and that there are steps you can take to become calmly confident. Because I would always say I was kind of confident. I would go out and do things, but I was always terrified. I always had so much anxiety. And then I'd do it and it wouldn't be perfect, and I would beat myself up. And so there was no joy in the stuff that I was doing. Even if I was successful, I had imposter syndrome. I'd still question, myself, and never think that anything was good enough. Or I'd get 49 glowing reviews of my workshop. And what was I focused on? The one person who didn't enjoy my workshop, and then I thought it was terrible just because of one person. So I really didn't want to live that way anymore. And when I learned about the whole science of self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can be successful in any given domain, and really beliefs are everything. You really have to believe everything to feel good about yourself, to feel confident, to have the courage. And so I really wrote about that in my book about, how to change those beliefs, how to actually do it. What's the step by step on how to actually do it. And I think it's because I was so blown away by that research that I really had to write a book about it. So that's my favorite. And I remember with my writing coaches, they said, "What do you want to write about?" And I said, "I'm going to write about positive psychology." And they said, "No, no, too broad, too broad. What's your favorite topic?" And I said, "Oh, it's got to be Albert Bandura's work on self-efficacy." They're like, "That's what you're going to write about." It's like, okay.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And it is so, so important. So how would you can you if someone wants to work on their self-efficacy, can you give us a little insight into how would someone go about doing that? Shifting their
Well,
beliefs.
so there's a number of contributors to self-efficacy. So if you want to change your beliefs, one of the best ways to change your belief is, so say you think you can't do something, like let's talk about playing the piano, right? So, let's say you're trying to change the self-efficacy of your children, for example, and their belief as to whether they think they can be as good as their dad one day, right? So the first one is to have what we call performance experiences. So that is to go and try something. And if you're successful doing it, then that changes your belief. You say, geez, I did it. Maybe I can do it again. So that is the most powerful way to actually change your belief in yourself. And a lot of people say, well, thanks. If I wasn't so afraid to go and try it, I would do that. Right. So the thing is to take baby steps. And what do we do with kids? We take them dun dun dun, like the first piano lessons are not learning, Bach, right? We're just doing little, practices. And that's how we get better and better and better. And I'm sure that's how your husband also learned. He's probably started at the beginning, right? So the more we can sort of take baby steps towards something, the more we start to then gradually improve and then that builds. And I always say competence breeds confidence, right? So that getting better. Another thing is to have role models, so, when your kids see you sort of starting like that, they say, well, mom's doing that. Maybe I can too, right? Or, I remember my husband used to go to CrossFit and I would think, oh, I can't do CrossFit. And then I saw a friend of mine who was sort of my frame, my height and whatever, and it was a woman, and I thought, oh, she's doing CrossFit. Oh, maybe I can do CrossFit. So I think having role models really changes our beliefs as well, which is why it's important to have role models that are, the same gender as us or the same color as us or the same age as us, like seeing people that kind of look like us, I think makes a difference in whether we believe we can do it or not. Another one is social support. Really important. We need to have those people who will encourage us to do well and to be there for us to say you can do it. Having those support structures, whether you create those with coaches or whether you have friends or family, that will do it for you. I think that that's a big, really big one. So those are some things, that build self-efficacy.
Brilliant. That's really brilliant. So one small wins, as I put it. So really, seeing that you achieve things, even the tiniest little things, like we said before, laughable steps, right? Oh, well, I can
Yeah.
do that. Okay. And all of a sudden you're further along than you thought you originally believed that you could do.
Exactly. And you have to believe that you did them. Imposter syndrome kind of perpetuates this idea that you go out and you're successful, but you never really think that it's you, or you just got lucky, or everyone in the room was smoking pot. You know what I mean? Like you have to really believe when you go and do stuff that you did it. And that's why it's so important. People say, oh, it was nothing. Go, no, it actually was something, like congratulate yourself. Understand that this was an achievement. This moved the needle for you. Take it in. Don't give it away to somebody else.
Yeah, I love that. And then having the role models and the social support being the other two. And I absolutely love all that because well, firstly, my little entrepreneurial mind is going crazy right now and all the directions and things that this could be, because I started this podcast, but also the company, because I believe in community and in doing things that scare us. And if we can bring people together to do that, then it's everything you just said, right? We're
Yeah,
going to automatically have role models who are just a little further ahead than we are. We're going to get some small wins if we challenge each other to go and do things that scare us. And we'll have that network around us, that community around us, say, yeah, that was freaking amazing. Wow, how did you do that? Like, can you teach
exactly.
me? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it all comes back to that community to help make it happen, right? And having
Community.
those
Yeah.
dreams, having those, we can have our big audacious dream, which is like the crazy huge one that actually might not happen in your lifetime. And then we can take it down and say, okay, like within that, what other dreams are there? Right? So if my big dream is to create a together world, that's the world I want to create, then my job is just to figure out how to do that in little ways throughout my life. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So if I can get a group together to go jump in a cold lake in the winter, that's doing all of those things you just mentioned,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Very true. If you can do that, you can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. I do. Yeah, exactly. Amazing.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing that and about those few steps that we can take. And I'm definitely going out to buy your book and read it. And I hope that others will as well. Is there anything else that you would like to share or give any tips or anything along those lines that you'd like to share before we finish today?
No, I think I've just got a whole box of my books right here. So I'm going to just pull one out. And I think, Wire Your Brain for Confidence, The Science of Conquering Self-Doubt. I think there are a lot of tips in here if people do want to read it. And in fact, I'm going to be doing some more work around it, which I'm excited about. But I think for, final tips, I think really it's about, we don't have that many days, on this earth, right? I'm really starting to get very clear on what I focus my attention on and what I spend my time on. That word spend, it's like I'm careful on what I spend my money on and careful on what I spend my time on. And I've only got one life to live. So I really do think it's important to be doing what you really want to do and find the courage and the confidence to go and do it. Because at the end of your life, there's nothing worse than sitting there regretting what you didn't do. And that's where most people's regrets are, not what they did do in life, but what they didn't do in life. And think about that. Think about sitting on your deathbed and thinking, did I really go out and live the life that I wanted to really live? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
And even better, you've trained your brain so much that you don't even think about whether you've done it, because you just know.
I
Right?
just, yeah, and,
Just know.
my friends and I, we were talking about this. We're kind of like the next generation of positive psychology. We're kind of early adopters, right? Like, I've been studying this for 15 years now, and incorporating it into everything I do and the work I do. So, we've had many years to kind of have a new version of what positive psychology has really done for us. And if someone said, what is it that you do every day? It'd be so hard to kind of tease apart because you kind of live a certain way after a certain amount of time. So I think it really is about figuring out, how to live a certain way, be a certain way, show up a certain way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole bunch of things.
I love that. And I love that you've written that book, and I highly recommend people go and read it. And one of the reasons I say that not only is because you're amazing and everything we just talked about is amazing, but because I think there's this kind of feeling about self-help books out there, and there's a gazillion million of them, right? And I
Yeah,
think the difference between yours and others who come from the positive psychology side of things is this is all research backed. You're not just saying my life went this way, so you should do it too, right? It's
yeah,
actually, this is what the science is telling us, and
yeah.
here's some exact ways to go and better your well-being.
Well, it's good to know the science because it's easy to say, yeah, go and be courageous, but it's like, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Can you tell me some of the psychology around fear or, do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Or around courage, right? And then once you know some of the psychology, it's so much easier to navigate what you want out of life.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. So where can people find you should they wish to follow
Well,
through?
louisajewell.com. I'm just launching a new website soon, so I'm very excited
Yay.
about that. And yeah, but louisajewell.com, they can find me there.
Amazing. I love that. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so excited to share all of this with everybody who listens and beyond. And hopefully speak to you again at some point soon. I love following all of your travels and your various bits and pieces and all the amazing work you're doing. Louisa, for anybody who works with in so many different settings, I think you could say more, Louisa, but you do a ton of work out there sharing and spreading this word about positive psychology and how we can really better our well-being, both with individuals, but in organizations and all sorts. So
Absolutely.
it's worth
Yeah.
having a look at your website to see what that is. I know if I owned a larger business and needed an inspirational speaker in there, I'd be calling you up. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you
yeah,
so much. Thank you,
yeah.
Mel. Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful, and congratulations on your podcast and everything, all the good work that you're doing. So thank you for everything you're doing in the world.
Thanks. That is it, folks. This has been Mel Finlater on Permission to Be Human, the podcast. And I am so glad that you have joined us here today, and hope that you have taken away some tidbits that will help you go away, connect with your big, audacious dream, and make that massive impact in the world that you are dying to make. If you liked today's episode, please, please, please like it, share it. Think of one person. Think of one person that you think would also like it and send it on over to them. Let's get this out there and more moms feeling like themselves, inspired, dreaming big, and out there being them. Please do head on over to find me on Facebook with Permission to Be Human, or Instagram, or you can even pop me an email and say hello at permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com. Say hello and let me know that you listened. What did you like about it? I would love to hear. If you didn't like it, I don't really want to know. Just kidding. You can share that if you want. I would love to know, however, who you are. Let's connect. Let's find out what you want more of. Yes, this is a newer podcast, so I want to hear from you, and I want to make it what would be useful to you. As always, remember that you have permission to dream big, permission to feel big, and permission to be you. You have complete and full permission to be human. For real. You do.